You're listening to Silicon Edge's Spotlight Interview Series. Now, here's your host, James Santagata.
All right, let's get this show on the road and get right down to brass tacks. I've been waiting all week to have this time set aside, and here we go. Donald Trump, the second coming of Jesus Christ the Almighty. Or Adolf Hitler, Satan's spawn reincarnate.
Der Führer ist die Partei und die Partei ist der Führer.
Opinions are all over the board on Trump. Emotions are running high. Passion, punditry, putrefacients everywhere. On one issue, on one man, on the Donald. Now, we're going to approach this from a psychological and leadership viewpoint. And personally, I find it deliciously exciting to watch. So pass the popcorn. And here is where it's about to get real. And by real, I mean Darwinian real. I mean Machiavellian real. This is not what you're going to see from your standard leadership pablum kind of company, which is just pushing the same old nonsense which doesn't work or only works when everyone else is following that kind of broken script or broken model. So why do we want to get real? Why do we care about results? Well, because at Silicon Edge, we only care about reality and results. Reality and results, reality and results, reality and results. So this la-la land thinking, which comes most often from the normative worldview, is verboten. So what exactly is the normative thinking, you may ask? Well, it's Disneyland thinking. It's Winnie the Pooh thinking. It's about how the world should be rather than accepting and acting within the world as it is. Now, there's nothing wrong with Disneyland thinking, Winnie the Pooh thinking if you're a child or if you're a billionaire. But if you're in the middle, it's probably not going to help you. Now, you may say that this is mean of me or somehow self-limiting, but I'll tell you right now, I challenge you to go to the local homeless area of your town, go to the local Skid Row, and inquire. And I will tell you, there isn't going to be a man or a woman among them that thinks that their life would have been better, that they wouldn't be homeless right now, living in a wet cardboard box under a highway overpass, if they had just watched a little bit more Winnie the Pooh or Goofy or whomever in their youth. Now, for us at Silicon Edge, it's all about the positive worldview. That is the way the world is. It's about what we face, what resources we have to work with to meet our objectives, or what resources we can rapidly acquire, where we need to go, and what we need to do to reach our objectives and get the desired results. Now, that said, I'm keenly aware that there are huge, and I mean huge, swaths of people in this world, especially in the U.S., where the weak-minded are doped, and I mean literally doped out of their minds with any and all manner of psychotropic and anti-anxiety medications. Now, if you doubt that, just today, Time.com reported, get this, anxiety drug overdoses in the U.S. hit record levels. Record levels. Well, what does that mean? Can we have some objective numbers? Well, the quantity of prescriptions filled tripled between 1996 and 2013. Tripled. And even worse, the number of anxiety drug overdoses quadrupled during that same period. And this is according to a report in the American Journal of Public Health. Now, even way back on October 20th, 2011, NPR reported that 11% of the people in the U.S. are taking antidepressants according to the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 11%. My God, with a population of around 300 million, that means over 30 million, perhaps 33 million Americans are on these drugs. If that's not startling enough, get this. More than 1 in 5 women, 20% plus of women aged 40 to 59 are taking an antidepressant. Women and adolescent girls are 2.5 times more likely than men and adolescents to be taking one of the pills. But here's the kicker. Nearly 4% of adolescents 12 to 17 years of age are on these same antidepressants. All all while living in a supposedly first world leading nation. Something is sick and wrong. Now, back to the normative worldview folk. Often these folks, everything, and I mean everything that seemingly threatens their Winnie the Pooh / Disneyland worldview is immediately characterized as mean, misogynistic, racist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, and or anti-Semitic, or all of the above simultaneously. So here we've developed the term matrix malware moron to describe such people. These are the triple M's. So a matrix malware moron, or triple M, they demonstrate not just the inability to think through issues logically, I mean, we're all emotional at some point, but they lack the intestinal fortitude and courage, the temerity, which is almost mandatory to evaluate, to accept the normal cognitive dissonance which arises whenever we evaluate our scripts, our values, and our beliefs from a rational standpoint or from a standpoint differing from our own. So, in that light, and to respect that, or actually to reduce our liability from some matrix malware morons either committing suicide when the silicon edge red pill shoved down their throat, our legal counsel as well as medical advisors have asked us that we run this short segment first. So after this mandatory health screening segment, we'll be back and see who's left standing. And if you're down with me, we'll see you on the other side as we strap in and prepare to go deep down this rabbit hole to deconstruct the Donald. This is on psychological and leadership terms, and find out how we can use that as well to help improve our own ability to lead, influence, persuade, negotiate, and to create a stress-free life from those that would use or otherwise abuse us and our good intentions.
What does that mean?
It means buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye.
This is a trigger warning. This is not a test. This is a trigger warning. If you are psychologically fragile, please move away from your viewing or listening device and into your safe space. This is a trigger warning.
Alright, congratulations, you've made it past the trigger warning. This means you're most likely not a matrix malware moron. But you already knew that. So back to the issue, Donald Trump. Love him or hate him, he continues to pull very strongly, and most amazingly, especially to laymen, he's doing it all while sailing into not just the rough seas of the political arena, but he's facing extremely strong and vicious headwinds from the controlled media, also known as the mainstream media to the naive or uninformed, what I call the frame creation industry, FCI, which we'll talk about a little bit later, as well as the frame maintenance industry, FMI. But most of all, he's running into opposition, both public and also backstabbing behind the scenes opposition from his own political party, the GOP. Now this is really not unexpected, again, save to the very naive or uninformed of the world, and the same thing happens in the Democrat Party as well. Right? There's the selected candidates they wish to win and people that want to be moved to the wayside. It's really just par for the course, always has been, always will be. But beyond this, what has shocked many pundits is that at each and every step of the way, at each and every juncture against the basically non-ending and withering accusations and attacks, Trump has amazingly not just surmounted each challenge, but he's embraced it in such a way that he's either redirected it, the energy, against his opponents, or he's absorbed it for his own benefit. And by the way, let's be very clear, this is not a value judgment, but a clinical observation. So I know some listeners here will have extensive knowledge or experience with some of these topics, and others may be somewhat new, so I'm trying to strike a balance between them. But let's jump right into it. This is not an exhaustive list, but it's some of the main reasons why is Trump triumphing. 10 things I'll give you real quickly. Authenticity. You may not like what he has to say, but he says what needs to be said, or he thinks needs to be said, and he sticks to it. Example is the not only building a wall, a border wall, but saying that he would send the invoice to Mexico. That's pretty amazing to hear something like that when everyone else is saying, basically, open the border. Is it right or wrong? Well, that's a moral or economic question, but the fact is he's saying what he is saying. 2, frame control. He always controls the frame. We'll talk a little bit about that later. 3, reframing ability. 4, he can maintain and utilize a challenging frame. 5, he doesn't seek approval. 6, he doesn't seek validation. 7, he avoids the ego box or ego trap. 8, he avoids the consistency trap. 9, he's multimodal or has multimodalities. And 10, he avoids the apology trap. Now, looking at this, we'll use the Psychological Jujutsu framework, which is a integrated and synthesized framework and extended from some of these inputs. This was developed over probably a 20-year period. Behavioral psychology, evolutionary psychology, sociobiology, your emotional intelligence or EQ, NLP, seduction, neuroscience, military science, and genetics, among many others. What we want to look at now, though, is some of the aspects related to Psyche Jujutsu, and then we'll tell you how Trump is able to utilize some of these items as well to his benefit. 1, frames. This includes definition, creation, the calibration of the frame, control, maintenance, imposition, right, giving your frame to someone else, forcing them to utilize it, refusal or redirection of someone's putting a frame on you, and then the destruction or busting of a frame. Second is reframing, both setting the context, also using a challenge to refuse a frame, or challenging the basis of the frame, and then an outright refusal or redirect. There's being authentic or authenticity, the idea of approval seeking, the idea of validation seeking and apologizing, challenging, using criticism or critique, ego control for yourself, an exploitation on your opponent, consistency control, and the avoidance of this. This is by using different modalities, multimodality, the ability to identify and utilize non-physical or intangible physics. This can be items related to social, psychological, emotional items as well. Then the idea of the message or the person, the delivery is somewhat fun-loving, light, or positive. Very critical. And lastly is the surfer cool framework. Now we'll get into this in more detail, but let's take a quick break right now with this message, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, and now let's explore some frames together. Simply put, a frame is how we view or interpret and structure our reality or the experience of an event. So a frame may be created by us, but in many, if not most cases, the frame has been poured into our little mush brains, our little pumpkin heads, when we were little, or it's been imposed upon us through institutions such as religions and such, social clubs, as well as through social shaming. Frames may also be both internal, right? We hold it internally to structure our own internal events or experience, or it's external, right? So internally, how we structure the experience or event. Externally, how others are structuring an experience or event, or including how they structure and evaluate us. So what would be some framing examples? Well, countless framing examples. The frame is similar to if I gave you a camera, or 5 people had their smartphone cameras in the same conference room, and I asked you to take a picture of the clock. Most likely each person would frame that composition, that photo, uniquely. Some would take it straight on, some would take it at an angle, some would take it lower, some would take it at maybe rotating the camera. All of those would be legitimate pictures of that clock, but they would come in at a different frame, the way it was composed. But here's an example. You're on your way back, you're on your way to work. When you get to the elevator, car, you're about to step in, but the person inside quickly pushes the closed door buttons, the close button on the doors, and bam, you can't get in. So one frame, let's call this frame number 1, would see that person in the elevator is either unaware of the situation, or another frame maybe they're just a selfish jackass. Another frame, or even a reframe of that first one, could be that the person was urgently late for work, and maybe you feel pity, or maybe you hope they actually make it on time. So there is no right answer to that framing, but it's a way that we're able to look at it. Now let's look at some of the framing decisions, right? There's numerous decisions or choices of how things can be framed. You can look at this whole abortion idea, right? Pro-choice or anti-abortion, or even pro-life. Terrorist or freedom fighter. Homeless or hobo. Downtrodden or lazy. Talented or lucky. Victim or complainer. Prudent or greedy. Proud or vain. Confident or arrogant. Crazy or eccentric. And crazy and eccentric are very interesting because they sit on the same continuum at two different sides. But at some point, crazy becomes eccentric. And that basically is mediated or defined by the size of your bank account. Right? So at some level, you're doing great just because you've got a good bank account. Now, from frames, we also have the concept of reframes. So let's delve into this a little deeper as well. Reframing is the ability or act to consider structuring the experience or event differently than we initially framed it, right? You can see it from multiple perspectives. So quick reframe. You've got a dreadful fear of public speaking. You may want to reframe that fear as an opportunity to improve or gain an important new skill, right? That's a very positive reframe. Reframe 2, something with some domestic issues at home. Maybe a big fight with the spouse or girlfriend. The next day you give her flowers, and very often she'll challenge you. Hey, you only got these to calm me down. You only got these because you were in trouble. The answer to that is the reframe, no. I got you these because I love you. So just with frames, reframes also can be both internal and external. So internal again, in this case, how we restructure an experience or event. External, how others restructure an experience or event, including how they structure and evaluate us. Now, what Trump faces in general is the four main items. The frame creation industry, FCI, the frame maintenance or control industry, FMI, frame momentum, how much movement and how much is this thing moving with the general public, for instance, right? Everyone's following the same frame. And of course, frame resiliency. How long can it maintain? And when it's hit or taken out, can it bounce back, or will the frame collapse? Some frames will collapse very readily. Others are amazing that will not do so. They're said to be very resilient. Now, we'll be right back to talk more about the FCI, the frame creation industry, right after this message on Psychological Jujutsu.
Thanks for listening. This program has been a presentation of Silicon Edge. Silicon Edge is personalized innovation for your competitive edge. Innovate, communicate, transform. Only at silicon-edge.com.